This video is going to try to keep your sanity about these upper heads when you're lapping the valves. Now, not all these upper heads are the same. Um, Keep in mind that heat. Now, when you're dealing with heat on the upper heads, a few things can happen. It can warp the surface plane here. It can warp the rim where the valves seat. And it can also damage the rim and the valves to the point where they can't be used anymore. Now, when you lap the valves, you don't really know what you're dealing with. Okay, so when you get your upper head, the first thing you want to know is this thing damaged? And is it usable? Well, that's why you do your diagonal. You do your diagonal. You put I use a leveling stick, a construction leveling stick, and I level it diagonally. I do it north, south, east, west, and then diagonally. And if there's any gaps underneath, I'm gonna stick a gapper underneath to find out what the gapping is. But usually, that's not the issue. The issue is lapping the valves. Now, when you lap it, I've seen videos of people doing it various ways, and there's a stick that you can use to stick a little suction cup here and grind it. Now, I don't really like that stick because it doesn't really give a firm, it doesn't give you a firm, hold of this valve. In my previous videos, I've also used the method where you take a 532 hose and you go on the opposite side here and you stick the hose on the valve and then you put it on a drill and you put the drill and the drill spins it either clockwise or counterclockwise. It's worked for me in the past, but I have to say it's not as reliable, and I mentioned it before. It's not the best method. The best method is to get a hose. Somebody else may have a best method, but I feel this is the best method. So if you're having problems lapping valves and making them seal, and you don't know if the head is damaged or the valves are damaged, stop the insanity for 1 second. Here's what you're going to do. All right. First of all, you need a 532 hose. This is a 532 hose, and I've got an air conditioning hose right here, which is a little bit more firm than, say, something like an aquarium hose. This is a standard one. It's not a 6mm. The 6mm is the size that goes onto your bleeder valve. This is probably going to be a 3mm. Okay, so it's going to be half this. The inner diameter, you can just get the smallest one. It'll fit on there, and they're very pliable. So even though they're too small, they will stretch. And as you can see, there's two sizes on there. So I can't say that this is a specific size because the tip expands. Now the 532 is a silicone. Okay, now silicone is extremely, it's a very good hose, and it stays. It doesn't warp and it doesn't take a contour to whatever size you're going to use it at. So this is a 532 hose. Now, when you stick it in there, what I would do in the past was, I would do it, but again, it's not the best method. Use this to hold that valve and to pull on it, because when you pull on it, and the more pressure that you're pulling on it while you're spinning it back and forth like this, okay, so you want to spin it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but you're pulling on that valve as hard as you can. So you want this little hole to be grease free. Okay, you want to grease your valve, but you want no grease on here so that that silicone holds firm. When you pull on it, you can literally pull as hard as you can and it's not going to come out. That is going to make your valve seal. All right, it's not how many rotations you do, and it's not what directions you go. When you use a drill, okay, it depends on the angle that you're coming in, or in this case, there's a curve on here, and when you spin it at high speed, that little curve causes the valve to go up and down, up and down, up and down. It won't seal. Okay, trust me on this one. If you use a drill, it has to be square. Now the valves are in a angle, so you kind of have to work it, and play with it. But you want to eliminate that wobble because that wobble is not going to seal your valve. Does it? Does the drill method work? It does. It does work. It can work, and at times it can drive you insane. This method is a little bit more careful, and you can feel a lot of the things that are going on. So here in my opinion, I'll give you my opinion. And like I said, I've seen a lot of people lap their valves and how they do it. And I've yet to see, some people go exactly by the textbook, and I didn't like it. It made me feel, it didn't give me that peace of mind that I want. So I'm going to try to offer a remedy or a solution based on my own experience. First, if your attempt to seal these valves have failed, it doesn't mean that the valve is done with. If you've ground these things down so many times and it still won't seal because there's a warp or you're doing something wrong, stop the insanity immediately and get another head. Okay, that's the first thing. The problem is probably some type of heat warp or some type of damage caused by heat on the head or some type of damage on the head. Um, if that's the case, then you're probably better to not use that head rather than try to seal the valves. When you get the new valve or when you have a valve that's not damaged, don't even try to lap it immediately. Get yourself a very high power flashlight. Okay? When you put this when you put a valve that is brand new on here, it probably won't seal. There may be some gaps, but to make sure, let's say you just put the valve in and you put it. Go ahead and check to see if it's sealing. You know, put a light right in here, and as you can see, let me see if I can get this thing to strobe. Okay, hang on. Here we go. So now it's strobing. You're gonna put that thing right there, and as you can see, when you put tension on it, it's not. You can't see any light. You can't see any light here either. So these four are sealed. Do you need to lap it? Do not lap it. If it's sealing right now, don't lap it. The only way you're gonna know if these things are sealing is a water test. Okay, so the light test doesn't say that it's sealing, but what it's telling me right now is that there's no light coming out at all. When you put two springs on here, and when you put the keepers on here and the springs on here, the tension on that seal is going to probably be 4 times what it is right now. So if it's sealing right now, when those two springs are on there, it's probably going to hold water and it's going to pass the leak test. So before you even lap it, take your flashlight and check it. Now, if there's a little leak in here, okay, lapping it can make it worse. What is going to make a little tiny gap seal completely? That's the question. The answer is to take your hand thing and to slowly do 10 rotations at a time. So 10 rotations lightly, okay? Now, it can get worse on you. Even if you have a little tiny amount of light there, and you do 10 rotations with the coarse, I'm using coarse and fine. Some people use 60 and then go all the way up to about 120 grit. I just use 2 grits, coarse and fine. Works fine for me. Keep it nice and simple. When you do 10 rotations, okay, I take toilet paper, wipe it off, put it back on, take a rag, wipe off that, do it, and then do the flashlight test. It can get worse on you. That little tiny leakage can be now a gigantic leak all around, even if you lapped it right. The answer is to put as much tension on that valve as you can. So when you stick it in there, before you even turn it, you gotta pull on it as hard as you can and just slowly tension it and work it in there. And the more tension you put on there, just go like that. The more tension you put on there like that, the better it's gonna seal. If there's a little tiny bit amount of light and you do that, the likelihood that it seals is probably going to be 100%. If it got worse, then you probably didn't put enough tension on that valve. Okay? So let me show you what I'm talking about. When you stick that little tube on that, valve, it doesn't want to come out. So when you pull back on it, that's the tension. Now, I got to get a degreaser and clean that hole out because it's slipping. I also put oil on these valves so that it spins freely inside the valve guide. So before you even do anything, before you're even done, okay, just because you spun the valves doesn't mean that they seal. And it'll drive you insane if you keep on doing it because they're not sealing. They're getting worse and worse. So when you stick that light on there, just because it's leaking right now, pop it out, okay? Let's say you got a little leak there. Pop it out. And when you push it back in, slam it in, okay? Slam it back in. Like this one, because it's under tension of the springs. It may be sitting on the lip. When you push it like that, it may be sitting on the lip. So when you have it out like that, slam it in there. That will tell you if it's sealed. See? No light, so they're sealing. I just lapped these, and they're all good. Does that mean it's going to hold water and it's going to pass the leak test? It doesn't. Until you put water on here, you don't know if it's going to pass the water test. Right now, what the flashlight test is telling me is that it's properly sealed and that no light is going to get through. Now, does that mean I could have made a mistake? Yeah. So after you do the leak test, if it doesn't pass the leak test, guess what? You got to relap them. Okay. So that, in my opinion, is the best way to lap valves. Use your flashlight, check them. If they're sealed, whether it's a new valve, a new head, used valves, worn valves. Now these are Honda valves. Honda valves are notorious for lasting forever. Honda valves are some of the best valves any manufacturer makes. So even if you can't get a head to seal and you've grinded those suckers down, when you put it on another head, the likelihood that it seals is going to be probably 100%. So don't even try to lap it anymore. You probably make it worse, and you'll probably make them too thin. So use your flashlight, check it. Keep on doing it little by little. Check it. And you will know if they seal before you do the water test, because it's a lot of springs and a lot of keepers you got to put on there just to do the water test. The water test is the only way you're going to know if these seals are good or not, unless you do a compression test. Now, I don't know anybody that does a compression test before they do a water test. But if you do a compression test and find out it's leaking, don't even bother. Don't even bother doing a water test, because a water test is the ultimate seal. A compression test just means that, you know, you have a little bit of a leak. So if the valves are not sealing, it could be your technique. If you take a drill and you keep on drilling it, it may not work. And it may not work because the tube or whatever method you're using has a wobble. And that wobble is not going to do it. You have to have direct pressure. You have to pull. You have to pull that valve all the way back as hard as you can while you're lapping it. Now, you don't have to lap it a lot. Like 10 little turns like that is all it takes. If you see that light's going through there and you do 10 little turns like that with the coarse grind compound, it's probably sealed. So that's that, in my opinion, is the best way to seal it. Check it with a flashlight, use a tube, and feel the tension and feel what you're doing. And if you're having trouble, you know, what I used to do, because I was just, don't want to, I'm impatient sometimes, I'll just put a drill on it and I'll spin it for 30 seconds one way and 30 seconds the other way, and I'll say it's sealed. And I won't even bother to test it. I'll just put it back on my bike. But, or just put it back, come to the assumption that it's sealed. I won't even do a water test on it. The drill method is not good. And, I'll re-emphasize this. The best method is your hand. Now, the little suction cup, I do have it, and I never use it. This is all you need, and a little attention and care to what you're doing, and you should have some really nicely sealed valve. Now, keep in mind, if it's damaged, you may get it to work, you may not. It may take a while, but you'll probably drive yourself insane before you get to that point. And if you use a drill and it's damaged, you're going to drive yourself insane doing that leak test and trying to get it to seal. But I hope this cuts through some of the, confusion and some of the methods that you see out there. It may work, but when you're having problems or, some difficulties that you're dealing with, there's always a method to the madness, so to speak. Okay, that's that's basically taking all the confusion out of it. Now, with all of them sealing, I will just put the springs on, put the keepers on, and maybe do a leak test. Take your water, stick your water in here, and just leave it there overnight, and then dump it out in the morning. That's it, and you're done. If there's water in there, then you know it's worked. If there's no water in there, then you know it's leaking.